But a couple weeks ago, I was in Bozeman with a fellow veteran friend of mine, and we had some time to kill before this veterans event. And he said, "Hey, do you want to go say hello to my friend Norm?" I said, "Yeah, let's go meet your friend Norm." And it's Norm Dreyer. He actually is the owner of First Choice Home Health, based here in Bozeman. But he said, you got to hear what he's doing. So, Norm, it's great to have you here on Montana Talks.
Thanks, Aaron. Glad to be here.
It's good to see you. So you just turned 60, 2 years ago?
Correct.
60th birthday, you find out you got Parkinson's.
Yeah, happy birthday, huh?
God, how hard was that to find out on your birthday?
It's difficult. It's somewhat of a devastating diagnosis, but there's so many more worse things that could happen to someone. And the Lord's blessed me in numerous ways. So this is an opportunity. I look at it as an opportunity to help others, and that's what I'm doing with Rock Steady Boxing.
Yeah, so I thought this was fascinating. We were chatting in your office here in Bozeman, and you said, yeah, boxing is great for Parkinson's patients. How come?
Well, exercise in general is great for Parkinson's patients, but in particular, forced, intense exercise through boxing, because boxing's been defined by many as one of the best exercises you can do. The boxing exercises, hitting bags, jumping rope, cardio, etc. And this was started 12 years ago in Indiana by a gentleman by the name of Scott Newman, and he started the very first gym, Rocksteady. And today, 12 years later, there's over 700 gyms or affiliates around the world, international, and I just started one about a month ago here in Bozeman.
Yeah, in fact, I just saw it on Facebook, actually through our mutual friend, Fuel Fitness in Bozeman. That's where you're starting this Rocksteady boxing gym. So that's really exciting. Of course, they got locations across Montana. I love going to the one in Billings, but I also like to be able to pop into their other locations when I travel across the state. All right, Norm Dreyer, hold that thought, because I want to talk more about Parkinson's and how Rocksteady boxing is helping them. Plus, this isn't the only Rocksteady across Montana, so we'll tell you about that and much more right after this quick break here on Montana Talks. The number, if you want to jump in on the conversation, 406-294-0970 on our Rimrock Cabinet Company phone lines. Of course, this hour of the show is brought to you by Rimrock Cabinet Company. Back after that.
And News Talk 95.5.
Yeah, so I was chatting with Norm Dreyer in his Bozeman office. He owns First Choice Home Health here in the Gallatin Valley. We're broadcasting live from Bozeman today, all morning long. But I was chatting with him in his office, and we were talking about boxing and these Rocksteady boxing gyms that are great for people with Parkinson's. And we'll talk more about why it's good and how it helps Parkinson's patients. But we were joking because I don't know if any of you have been there or not, but in the Rimrock Mall in Billings, they've got a virtual reality gaming store there. Norm, have you tried virtual reality games before?
I have not.
Oh, okay, so it's pretty fun. It's a little pricey, but take your kids or grandkids.
Yeah.
But anyway, they have a boxing game on this virtual reality thing. I was smoked. I'm sweating like a pig, and I'm at the mall, and I look like Will Ferrell and Step Brothers. Troy Downing, you remember Step Brothers? You remember that movie?
Absolutely,
Will
yeah.
Ferrell, and he's like, "Why are you so sweaty?" "Oh, sorry, I was watching Cops." Well, I was, but that's how. But it was really fun doing the little simulator, even. So I'm sure it's just got to be a great time doing this boxing gym as well. Troy Downing will join us a little bit more here later in the show. Or Troy, jump in if you got a question or a thought for Norm here also.
No, it's all fascinating. I'm enjoying listening to this.
So Norm, you were telling us a little bit how you found Rocksteady gyms. You turned 60 on your birthday. You got the birthday present nobody would want. You found out you have Parkinson's. First off, talk about what Parkinson's is, the symptoms that it causes, and why physical activity like boxing is so good for Parkinson's patients.
Yeah. But first, let me put a shout out to your friend you mentioned, your veteran friend, Matt Wolcott.
Great guy.
And I wonder how busy he may be this weekend. He has that outdoor group providing the security to high-end clients, and the president being in town, he may be talking to Secret Service today.
Yeah. In fact, we had him when he did we talk with him about Altor? He's involved in so many different things. He's involved in Love Inc., which is an incredible organization. He's involved in that in the Billings area, and they've got a Love Inc. here in Bozeman, I think, too. They basically, if people have needs, they'll meet those needs. And then he's got Altor Operations Group. So basically, they take outdoor professionals, special operators and others, people who are skilled with personal security type missions. So if somebody flies into the airport here, which often happens, and they're a high value individual that needs a security detail, that he spins up his Montanas. They might have day jobs during the week, and then on the weekend they're providing PSD into Yellowstone National Park or something.
And they know the outdoors in Montana.
Yeah,
for sure.
And they're not going to cook for you. They're not going to clean for you. They're your security detachment here.
Take care of you. Make sure you're safe.
Yeah, and big business here in Montana too.
It is.
Yeah. Matt Walcott's a great guy. That's how I got to meet Norm Dreyer here. So Parkinson's. What symptoms do you get, and why is boxing so good for Parkinson's patients?
Well, it's interesting because most Parkinson's patients have the disease years before they're diagnosed, and many of them are misdiagnosed. For example, myself, I for a couple years prior to my diagnosis at age 60, I just didn't feel right. I couldn't put my finger on it. I was lethargic. Sometimes I felt hypotensive, low blood sugar. And I have a home health care business, so I have nurses on staff. I'd have them check my blood pressure, check my blood glucose. Everything's fine. Wife says you're stooping more, you're slouched more, you're lethargic. And then one day, Aaron, I developed a little tremor in my right hand. And being in healthcare, I'm an occupational therapist as well. I went, uh-oh, I think I know what this is. And I went and looked up all the symptoms and started highlighting all the symptoms that I had, and it was more than half of them. So, but the four major symptoms are a tremor. Typically, it's in the upper extremity, but it can be in the legs, can be in the face, can be. I know a gentleman that had a tremor in his mouth, and of all things, his occupation was a dentist.
Oh wow!
How about that? Another major symptom is what's called bradykinesia, or slowness of movement. As a matter of fact, my grandchildren call me Mr. Turtle because I move so slow. Muscle rigidity or stiffness is another one. That can be in the lower extremities and the trunk, also the upper extremities. Those are the major symptoms. There's a lot of non-motor symptoms as well. Like depression, anxiety, constipation, sexual dysfunction, GI problems. There's a thing called micrographia, where your handwriting gets smaller and smaller over time. As a matter of fact, if you look up some research on Adolf Hitler, who many thought had Parkinson's disease, you look at his signature over time, chronologically, and it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. Another major symptom is sleep disorder, what they call REM, sleep disturbance, where, and you often have that years before you're diagnosed.
So just because of those tremors, those movements, that it almost keeps you awake to a certain, or doesn't allow you to get into a deep enough sleep? Is that what happens?
No, check this out. So the tremor that you can see, I have a tremor right now, and it actually gets exacerbated when I'm excited or stressed out. So don't
being on the radio. Yeah,
whoa. Yeah. But when you sleep, the tremor goes away. During sleep, there is no tremor. But I mean, you have to be asleep, not when you're just lying in bed getting ready to go sleep, and that can be a problem because you're lying in bed and you're tremoring and it's keeping you awake. But once you fall asleep, it disappears.
Well, I was going to say, Troy Downing's sitting right here. If you want to punch somebody, boxing is good. You can take a shot at Troy right here.
Just a couple of questions. I mean, it sounds like it's the extreme aerobic exercise that's helping your symptoms. So when you're in your boxing classes or sparring or whatever you're doing, do the tremors go down in that when you're very physical? Or
yeah, they do, because for the most part it's called a resting tremor. The tremor is at rest. If you notice, when I move my arm, the tremor disappears. So when you're in activity, you're not tremoring too much, but it's a resting tremor. But yeah, so I was diagnosed, and like most people are diagnosed with a pretty significant disease, you want to learn as much as you can about it. And in my research, I stumbled across
especially in your business, because you work in home health.
Yeah,
so yeah.
So I stumbled across this book called Rock Steady Boxing. I thought, what the heck is that? And come to find out, it was for Parkinson's patients. So I went to where it was started in Indianapolis and spent 2.5 days there and became a certified trainer, and just amazed by what what they can do.
Well, when you were telling me about this, I was thinking, because and this is based on the very, very limited knowledge I have of Parkinson's, but isn't there a struggle with balance too? Like there can be, worried about some Parkinson's patients who might fall and things like that. So I would think that boxing would be the last things. I mean, I could barely stay on my feet doing the boxing simulator. I mean, how does somebody with Parkinson's do so well with boxing?
That's a very good question, because it is one of the major symptoms is imbalance, and a lot of Parkinson's patients suffer falls from that. So you work on that through Rocksteady. We work on balance. We put out the agility ladders, and we work through that, and we do balance exercises. And there's something about crossing the midline and hitting bags that they've discovered builds neuroplasticity in the brain and may help restore some of the neurons that are dying off and losing their dopamine.
I guess it kind of makes sense with anything. If you have a bad back like I do, well, you got to strengthen your back, right?
Right.
You don't just lay down and now not do anything with it anymore. You have to continue working it.
Move it.
There's, I think, and Troy I think will be interested in this as well. Of course, Troy Downing, who's here with us as we broadcast live from Bozeman here all morning long. Air Force veteran, of course. You were in helos, and of course I'm an Army veteran. We got a lot of veterans that listen to this show, but really it's anybody who but is there a connection potentially? I know this is one thing we're going to talk about. There's an organization at the University of Montana that's studying traumatic brain injury and some of these other things, but can there be Parkinson-type effects that traumatic brain injury, from a traumatic brain injury, that the veterans or others might suffer also, or is that something that's continuing to be looked at?
I think that's something continuing to be looked at. It's interesting that Rocksteady boxing is just for Parkinson's patients only. They've tried to incorporate other neurological diseases like MS, strokes, etc., but it just doesn't work out. So it's strictly for Parkinson's patients. And we've got 14 boxers right now. We started a month ago. We've got 14 boxers, and they range in age from upper 50s to the 80s. And they are the most courageous battlers I've ever seen. I mean, you think about it, to wheel in a wheelchair or in a walker and strap on some gloves and exercise for 90 minutes is incredible. We work out 3 times a week from 1:30 to 3. As you mentioned, at Fuel Fitness here in Bozeman, and hats off to them. They've been great hosts for their facility.
Yeah, they look really excited to have this going on when I saw their Facebook post.
They're wonderful people, wonderful people.
Well, we'll talk more about what you're doing at Fuel Fitness in Bozeman, and then also give our listeners a heads up about some of the other Rocksteady gyms around Montana as well. And so anyway, but we got to take a quick break here on Montana Talks. Back with Norm Dreyer talking about this new Rocksteady boxing gym and how boxing helps Parkinson's patients. We've also got Troy Downing standing by with us here as we broadcast live from Bozeman. Then in the 9 o'clock hour, hey, who knows who's going to show up? I mean, we just did an open invite, and sometimes you get a lot of people that'll show up but don't want to talk on the radio, but they stop by to say hi. Sometimes you get a lot of people that want to stop by and talk on the radio. Either way, we'll be here with the microphones open and the phone lines open for you, 406-294-0970. Back after this. All right, Aaron Flint here. Yeah, we're broadcasting live from Bozeman all morning long. If you're just tuning in, we've had a fun morning. In the 6 o'clock hour, I'll do like the Associated Press Montana News Minute. I'll tell you what Fox News Radio's tracking for the top stories for the day. We'll play a morning montage from Fox News Radio, and then we'll start to get into the other big issues, play Rush Limbaugh's commentary, things like that, in addition to Montana news and weather throughout the morning also. But this morning, it was like right off the bat, at about 6:20 in the morning, Jeff Laszloffy with the Montana Family Foundation stopped in and joined us, chatted about his event last night and some of the religious liberties cases he's been tracking. And then Dominic in the morning, Dominic from the local show here in Bozeman, 1450 KMMS and 1340 KPRK, he called up to our studio, to our producer Travis Lee. So we were live in Bozeman with him, and he was live in Billings with us at about 6:40 in the morning. So that was a great time. In fact, Troy Downing, you were in Big Sky driving to town and overheard our Billings show.
I was listening to Dominic talking about you and complaining that you didn't stop into his office, and then all of a sudden he called up your producer, your tech, and got on the show. So I'm listening on the local station, hearing his version of you being on the Billings.
Show. So Norm, we might need you to stick around and put your boxing skills to work when this Dominic character shows up here at 9 o'clock. There's our good friend, the Rabbi Chaim Bruck here from Bozeman. Yeah, it would be good to see him in person.
You haven't met Dominic yet, so I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, you might have to stick around with us.
So hey, I've got a question for you. This program, using this exercise, using the boxing, does that slow the progression of the disease, or does it treat the symptoms, or what are you seeing there?
Excellent question, Troy. Yeah, it is a neurodegenerative disease with no cure, so it does continue to progress over time, but you can slow the symptoms down, slow the progression down through this exercise program called Rock Steady Boxing. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's incredible. Now, where else are these Rock Steady gyms at? I think we were saying Helena, Kalispell, maybe, and they're. Tell us about the other locations across the state.
There's one in Helena. I think there's one in Billings. There's probably going to be one in Missoula pretty soon. As I mentioned earlier, they started out 12 years ago, and now there's over 700 affiliates around the world. It's growing like leaps and bounds. Started by the gentleman by the name of Scott Newman, who discovered that this particular exercise, forced intense boxing exercise, was really helpful. So he said, I'm going to start my own gym, just for boxing. I said, what are you going to call it, Scott? And he held out his hand and said, Rock Steady. And that's how it was born. And
nice.
If people want information, they just go to rocksteadyboxing.org. And there's a map of the U.S., and you can go to whatever state you want to find out where the locations are, and that's where you can locate us. We have visitors from other states come through, call me up and say, hey, Norm, I'm traveling. I'm visiting some friends in Bozeman. Do you think I could stop in and take in a class? Because it becomes really addictive. Really works well for people.
Yeah, in fact, I'm going to try to pull that up here because my first question, I was like, man, I need to track down the location in Billings too, and kind of help promote them and get the word out about that, because I'm sure there's people listening right now. They're like, I've got a sister or a mother, or
right.
or themselves that are struggling with Parkinson's, and I know how even just what can seem like a small health issue can just really impact you, emotionally in such a negative way, that how when you have even more of a challenge like Parkinson's, how something like this can just be a life changer for a lot of folks. So it's really cool what you're doing.
Yeah, and Parkinson's is a disease where there's no cure, but you can treat the symptoms, and medication is one of them. They developed what Parkinson's is a lack of dopamine, is what it is, in the brain. The neurons that produce dopamine are dying, and dopamine controls movement, so erratic or no movement at all as a result of that. So you treat the symptoms, and you don't die from Parkinson's. You usually die from complications of Parkinson's, like pneumonia or falls that are fatal. So
there is a way that you can reverse. You can reverse it, or is it more about maintaining? Basically,
well, you can. They've actually shown that you can reverse some of the symptoms, some of the progression, some of the movement disorders. Yeah,
huh?
It's incredible.